Today we're going to take notes on friction. Please make sure you have your notes page open in front of you so that we can take these guided notes on friction. So we have been learning a lot about forces, and you need to know that friction is a type of force that opposes motion between two surfaces that are in contact. So let's look at this example here. In this picture, the box wants to move to the right. It's being pushed to the right. But the force that is opposing that motion is friction. And that friction force acts in the opposite direction of the motion. So friction occurs because there are electromagnetic forces that exist between any two surfaces that touch. So these electromagnetic forces are what cause friction to occur between surfaces. Friction occurs because that surface of an object is rough. Even smooth surfaces that appear totally smooth have microscopic hills and valleys, and that creates friction between those surfaces. So here we can see this box is moving over what looks like smooth ground, but when we use a microscope and we look at the very smallest version we are able to of the box and of the ground, we can see that that's not actually fully flat. It's not fully a smooth surface, and so friction is created. The rougher the surface, the greater the friction. So the rougher the surface, the greater the friction. And if we are looking at this picture, which of these surfaces has more friction? In other words, which of these surfaces is rougher? Hopefully you said B, that B has more friction because B has grass and rocks and it has more roughness. It's a rougher surface than the smooth snow. And friction can be helpful or harmful. So we're now going to talk about some different types of friction. So we know that friction is a force. Friction is a type of force. And now we're going to talk about the type of friction that exists. The first type of friction is called static friction, and static friction is the friction that occurs between two surfaces that are stationary. And another word for stationary is not moving. So this is between two objects that are at rest. Static friction is the force that resists or keeps an object from beginning sliding motion. And like I said, these two surfaces are in contact and they are at rest. They are not moving. So here's some great examples of static friction. Here this person is trying to move this bookcase but is unable to do so because of the static friction. The same goes for this man with his horse and this man trying to push over that giant boulder. So all of these are examples of static friction. The next type of friction is kinetic friction, and kinetic friction is the friction between moving surfaces. So these objects are moving. Kinetic friction is the force that opposes the movement of two surfaces that are in contact and sliding or moving over each other. So kinetic friction is those forces between two surfaces when both of the surfaces are moving. And we have some different types of kinetic friction. The first type is sliding friction. That's when things slide over each other. The second is rolling friction. That's when things like wheels roll down a hill. And the next is fluid friction. And this is movement through air or water. Let's first talk about sliding friction. Sliding friction is when objects slide against each other or past each other. So there is that sliding motion. You can think about this as a tissue box trying to slide down a ramp or a book trying to slide down a ramp. So here are some great examples. If you go sledding or when we did our ramp lab, if you put a book down the ramp, that is an example. Going down a slide, pushing something, pulling something, and sliding into home plate are all examples of sliding friction. Our next type of friction is rolling friction. Rolling friction occurs when a round object rolls over a flat surface. This makes sense. And there are many different examples. When we use a shopping cart, that is rolling friction. When we drive in our car, that is rolling friction. When we use a bicycle or a skateboard, that is also rolling friction. And if we throw a ball or kick a soccer ball, all of those are forms of rolling friction. And last but not least, we have fluid friction. And this is when an object moves through a fluid. And what we count as a fluid in physics is either a liquid or a gas. So either through a liquid like water or a gas like air. And here are some great examples. Anything swimming in the ocean, these fish, that human, the shark, they're all moving through water and therefore they're experiencing fluid friction. This skydiver, this eagle, these airplanes, these are all experiencing friction from fluid friction from flying through a gas, which is our atmosphere and air. So hopefully you now understand what friction is. Friction is a force. And hopefully now you also understand that there are different types of friction. There are kinetic friction, and there's also static friction. And within kinetic friction, we have sliding, rolling, and fluid friction. Hopefully that's what you learned today, and you've completed your notes successfully.